Today, I dined at the luxurious Maple Breeze Manor, a place I've always admired. I was thrilled. My name is Elizabeth. I am 40 years old and have no children. I work part-time in an administrative role. My husband, Michael, is 42. Today, my in-laws suggested, let's have a meal together for a change. It's on us, so we took them up on their offer. My mother-in-law explained why she chose this restaurant. The courtyard is visible from the room and it's really beautiful, especially at night when it's lit up. There's also a pond with fish swimming in it, she said. It was genuine high-end restaurant. Having a courtyard, and a magical one at that. To be able to enjoy a delicious course of cuisine in such a setting. I put on makeup, which I don't usually do, and looked forward to going to the dinner with my husband. We are the Johnsons, we have a reservation, my father-in-law said as he addressed the hostess who came to greet us. Mr. Johnson, we have been expecting you. Please follow me, she replied. The hostess who welcomed us was also properly dressed. So elegant. Really elegant. Then, we were led to a waiting area inside, where refreshments were served on a heavy wooden table. In the center of the large natural wood table was a large pink stone-like lump. What is this? I asked. Could it be a decorative stone? It seemed too large for me to carry. This is Himalayan rock salt. It's used for seasoning dishes, my father-in-law explained. Wow. I was amazed by my father-in-law's explanation. I had never seen such beautiful pink salt. Everything was wonderful. However, contrary to my buoyant mood, it was from this point that the atmosphere at the restaurant began to feel off. Despite waiting for a long time, we were not led to the dining room for our meal. We have finished the refreshments and drinks. After an hour, my father-in-law timidly asked a passing hostess, "Excuse me, we had a reservation for 6 p.m. under the name Johnson. Is our meal ready yet?" The hostess replied, "Oh, Mr. Johnson. Yes, we have your name down. Please wait a little longer," and then she left and did not return. Initially, my in-laws said, "Let's just wait patiently," but after 2 hours, even they started saying, "This is a bit much." And rightly so. Having a reservation for 6 p.m. and hearing nothing by 8 p.m. We waited in the waiting area for as much time it would take to finish a casual meal. For a high-end restaurant, this seemed unacceptable. No, it would be strange even if it wasn't a high-end restaurant. My mother-in-law spoke to another hostess who happened to pass by. "Excuse me. We made a reservation and have been told to wait a bit, but it's been 2 hours now." The hostess said, "Oh," and ran off. After a while, a woman dressed formally, not the same hostess as before, came out. It was clear at a glance that she was in charge. She might be around 50 years old. Not a single hair was out of place, her hair pinned up neatly. With her elaborate hairstyle, she introduced herself without even a formal greeting. "I am Susan, the manager here. I apologize for the inconvenience caused." My mother-in-law repeated. "We are the Johnsons. We had a reservation for 6 p.m., right?" "Yes, we did have your reservation," Susan said. "Then why weren't we seated for our meal at 6 p.m., my mother-in-law pressed on. Susan then said, "I apologize. At 5:30 p.m., we had a last-minute request for a reservation at 6 p.m. What? My mother-in-law raised her voice in surprise. "I made our reservation 2 weeks ago, didn't I?" "Yes, you did," she confirmed. "Then, shouldn't the normal response be to tell those last-minute people that the reservation slots were already filled?" Susan then said, "Well, we did usher you into the building at 6 p.m., right? To the waiting area, as per your reservation time. However, a last-minute reservation came in, so we were planning to guide you to your meal as soon as a room became available." Completely nonchalant. Wait a minute. I've never heard that being ushered to the waiting area at the reservation time is acceptable. My mother-in-law was outraged. But Susan, shrugging her shoulders, retorted. "Do you know who made that last-minute reservation?" "What?" "It was President Scott of Scott Enterprises." Scott Enterprises. Even I had heard the name. It's a big company around here. In that case, we prioritize them," Susan said as if it were the most natural thing. But my mother-in-law stood her ground firmly. That's not how it works. Are you saying there's a hierarchy among customers? It should be first come, first served. Despite my mother-in-law's raised voice, Susan was unfazed. That's your assumption. Our establishment's rules are different. This place is a social venue for the successful. Poor people who do not fit the criteria can please leave, she said, haughtily. Her haughtiness seemed to make her appear taller, as if by 10 feet. Well, that must be my imagination. Poor. This time, my father-in-law's voice faltered. Not to speak out of turn, but my in-laws are not poor. On the contrary, they are quite well off. However, Susan glanced at me with surprise, sneered, and said to my father-in-law, "And you, sir? You're not a company president, are you?" "Well, no. I'm not a president," my father-in-law confirmed hesitantly. My mother-in-law became even more furious. "Excuse me. There's no nobility or inferiority in one's profession," she snapped back. But Susan brushed it off lightly. "Of course, there is. If you don't mind me asking, what does your husband do?" My father-in-law answered timidly. "I'm in academia, studying archaeology." "Then please spend your life digging up ammonites," Susan said sharply, laughing scornfully. "If you're digging for ammonites, you wouldn't need any social interaction, right? As I said before, our place is a social venue for the successful." Then Susan began to belittle my mother-in-law further. "And it goes without saying for you, madam, with your appearance. Poverty is seeping out of you." "What?" My mother-in-law raised her voice. It's natural to get angry when suddenly criticized about one's attire. "Is that from New Orleans in the southern region? They wear colorful plastic bead necklaces on Mardi Gras, right?" "That must be it." "Mardi Gras?" Though not exactly a plastic bead necklace, my mother-in-law was wearing a sparkly attire. By then, Susan's gaze had completely turned into one of disdain for the lower classes. "How dreadful. Elderly people from the South who are poor tend to haggle in department stores, don't they? Wearing such clothes. Such prejudice. Being from the South, I know that people don't haggle in department stores. And by the way, those necklaces that are supposedly worn by women from the South are actually from a brand and are quite expensive." Susan's head was filled with prejudices about everything, including professions. "People like you should wander around discount supermarkets. I was thinking of preparing a seat for you as soon as one became available. Maybe around 10 p.m., but being pressed by such poor people is completely out of place and has spoiled our mood, so please leave." Then, to the attendant behind her, she said, "Freshen the air after they leave. Poverty attracts more poverty." My mother-in-law exclaimed, "Enough. We're leaving," and angrily stood up to leave. Absolutely disgusting. Eventually, the four of us discussed what to do, and my father-in-law suggested, "Let's go to our favorite steakhouse," so we went there. It was also quite upscale, and I was truly satisfied, but my mother-in-law continued to seethe. What was that condescension about? Utterly unreasonable. "And what's with the Mardi Gras? I'm not even sure of what it is like." Mardi Gras is?" I began to explain. Mardi Gras is celebrated with extravagant festivals and parades. They often feature vibrant costumes, elaborate floats, music, dancing, and indulgent foods and drinks. New Orleans is particularly famous for its Mardi Gras festivities. What's with the bead necklaces? Well, it's tradition to throw bead necklaces out from the parade floats. I was somewhat amused by Susan's oddly specific knowledge, but my mother-in-law's anger had reached its peak. That owner, looking down on people she considers poor, she deserves to be brought down a notch herself. My husband, my father-in-law, and I, all overwhelmed by my mother-in-law's intensity, swallowed our premium steaks without even chewing, gulping it down whole. Then, less than a month later, I received a call from my mother-in-law. "We're going to Maple Breeze Manor." "Excuse me?" I was taken aback on the phone. Why would we go back after such an unpleasant experience? "Of course, for a meal. Let's meet at the same time, 6 p.m. "Okay." They were the ones who said so. my mother-in-law said with a laugh before hanging up. That weekend, we were again at Maple Breeze Manor at 6 p.m. As soon as we arrived, an attendant greeted us at the gate. Immediately, we were recognized as the Johnsons. "We've been expecting you." And shortly after being served drinks and refreshments in the waiting room, we were shown to our seats. It was clear we were seated in the best dining room with a view of the garden. And every dish that came out was incredibly delicious. The garnish included just a few berries and some elegantly placed herbs. Every single dish was crafted with meticulous care. A feast for both the eyes and the palate. Towards the end, prime rib was served, and we were told to enjoy it with Himalayan rock salt. The flavor, the tenderness of the prime rib, the depth of the Himalayan salt, it was sublime. I felt as though I could ascend to the heavens. My gaze shifted to the illuminated garden and the fountain. I felt as if I had become a queen of an ancient kingdom. As this dreamlike time was coming to an end, and we were enjoying our dessert, Susan, the very owner from before, approached us. "Mrs. Johnson, how was your meal?" "Oh, it was absolutely delightful," my mother-in-law replied smoothly, sipping her post-meal coffee. Seeing this, Susan seemed relieved and began to apologize. "I truly apologize for any discomfort our previous discourtesy may have caused you." However, once everyone had finished their dessert, my mother-in-law said, "Thank you for the meal. I suppose we shall never meet again." "Eh?" Susan was taken aback. "We came because you said you wanted to talk. We ate because you suddenly served us food." "What about it?" "What about it, indeed? After all that dining. Do you understand why this has happened?" Despite having enjoyed so much, my mother-in-law was still cornering Susan. Then, Susan confessed her misdeeds. "Our place is a social venue for the successful. Poor people, please leave," such a disrespectful remark I made. "Right. So, it's all about business first, isn't it?" My mother-in-law placed her coffee cup down with a soft click. Susan's face turned even paler. Today, her elaborate hairstyle seemed about 5 centimeters shorter than before. Susan began to apologize again. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think that the Anderson Group would cancel all their dealings with us." "I see, that's what this was about. I understood then." My mother-in-law was the Director of General Affairs at the Anderson Group's headquarters, which has branches nationwide. The wrap-up for the management training, appreciation parties, internal group networking events, year-end parties. And even the dinners for company trips. All these arrangements were handled by the General Affairs. And she was the head of it. She must have instructed the subsidiaries not to use this restaurant either. "It was your decision to assume that non-executives aren't successful, and that my bead necklace looks like Mardi Gras, right?" My mother-in-law scoffed and then said, "Don't underestimate the General Affairs. Don't look down on anyone other than the executives, that's what I think. I am truly, truly sorry for our rudeness. I apologize sincerely." Susan began to tremble with apology. "What exactly are you apologizing for?" "Let's hear it," my mother-in-law demanded, looking down on her. I judged you based on appearance alone. I considered you unsuccessful." My mother-in-law scoffed again and waved her hand. "You've completely missed the point of why I'm upset." I looked back and forth between my mother-in-law and the trembling owner. Let me make it clear, since I'm also in General Affairs at the Anderson Group. General Affairs is like a jack of all trades for the company's employees. Anything and everything comes to General Affairs. Regardless of who it is. At home or in society, they come to the General Affairs with their issues. Our job in General Affairs is to empathize with them and support them in every possible way. With that, my mother-in-law slammed her hand on the table. "It's audacious as a human being to judge people based on your standards of winners and losers. Is it only the executives who are successful? That's a joke. Everyone is struggling in their own lives. If we were to classify people as winners or losers, as long as one doesn't think they've lost, then they're not losers in life. It's okay to say it's a battle still being fought. Hence, you're not a loser until one believes it to be, and it's not for others to arbitrarily decide the outcome. I, as part of General Affairs, have never judged anyone as a winner or loser. My father-in-law added. In that sense, since I've always been passionate about archaeology and have dedicated my life to it, I guess I'm on the winning side. My husband remarked. He added, it might seem ordinary, but building a life with my wife and enjoying simple conversations makes me feel like a winner too. Not wanting to be outdone, I proudly declared, even though it's just a part-time job. I'm contributing to the company and have a strong relationship with my husband, so I consider myself a winner too. And regarding this dress you hastily labeled as poor people's attire, I continued. I'm truly sorry. Susan apologized. Do you equate being wealthy with wearing items flaunting the Chanel logo or being adorned with large brand logos? What do you mean? Susan asked. This dress is a bespoke piece from Gucci, worth $60,000. If you couldn't recognize that, then it's your lack of discernment that led to this misunderstanding. Gucci. Susan gasped. My mother-in-law chuckled and gently tugged at the fabric of her dress near the chest. See? Each gem is meticulously sewn by hand. It's fair to call this a masterpiece, epitomizing the pinnacle of Italian craftsmanship. I believed this garden and establishment were fitting for such a gown. It's unfortunate you failed to appreciate that. Susan began to sob, her tears mingling with mucus. Well then, shall we head home? My mother-in-law suggested as she rose to her feet. Susan clung to my mother-in-law's legs. I'm truly sorry. Please, consider the meal on the house. My mother-in-law shook off Susan's grip. We'll settle the bill. We came at your invitation, and you served us without inquiry. However, we'd rather not be accused of dining and dashing. Being judged by someone who categorizes people into winners and losers over such an accusation is equally troublesome. Take this as a farewell gesture and accept it with gratitude, she stated, even as Susan clung more desperately. If the Anderson group forsakes us, both I and this establishment will indeed be the losers. I beg for your leniency. That's precisely the point. My mother-in-law interjected, silencing Susan's pleas. Life isn't a loss until you concede defeat. Were you even listening? Given your tendency to rashly determine your fates, you might lack the insight to grasp such notions. Life's trajectory, whether shaped by karma or destiny, can shift. In that regard, this restaurant faces a formidable challenge, but view it as a repercussion of your readiness to judge and categorize individuals. My mother-in-law stated with finality. Finally, she freed herself from Susan's grasp. As Susan continued her tearful pleading, my mother-in-law remarked at the entrance, on our visit, you prioritized Scott Enterprises over us. A company under our contract. I doubt their president will return here either. Subsequently, Maple Breeze Manor shut its doors. The location transformed into a popular chain steakhouse. Given that my mother-in-law's firm was their largest client, the outcome seemed inevitable. Susan sought part-time employment at the steakhouse but was unequivocally turned down. Known as the former owner of a prestigious restaurant, she remains unemployed. My father-in-law learned of this through the steakhouse manager at a company event. I can't pull someone's chestnuts out of the fire, the manager quipped with a smirk. A month later, my mother-in-law returned home, arms laden with a lavish bouquet from her colleagues. My husband and I rushed to congratulate her. Some had to be delivered because they were too numerous to carry, she exclaimed joyfully. Indeed, that day marked my mother-in-law's retirement from the firm. She had always fostered close ties with everyone, from part-time staff to full-timers, earning her an abundance of flowers. I'll still be consulting for another 5 years. With all this attention, facing everyone at work tomorrow will be interesting, she chuckled. With all these flowers and congratulatory notes, you're certainly a champion at the firm. There's still a long journey ahead. I'm midway through, not yet victorious or defeated. She responded with vigor. The notes were filled with hopes for another 5 years of work together. Caught in the moment, I found myself tearing up, which my mother-in-law noticed. Oh dear, are you crying? It's just allergies. Definitely allergies. Being cherished and esteemed by her peers, such a mother-in-law is truly exceptional. I'm sure that she will always be the mother-in-law that I have always been proud of.